The first soldier to scream wasn't even hit. He just saw what was coming. A meteor-sized drop pod screamed through the upper atmosphere of Seelan V, fire trailing from its tail like the wrath of a dying star. Every sensor on the Zarthos command grid blinked red as the object defied deceleration patterns, its hull refusing to vaporize, its speed not just surviving the descent but increasing as it punched through their outer defensive screen. Inside the temporary planetary command center, Supreme Strategist Zaltrin of the Zarthos Dominion blinked all four of his eyes. "That was not one of ours," he rasped, mandibles twitching. "Identify the trajectory." A technician's tendrils shook as they worked the interface. Unknown signature. "It's not Dominion, it's— wait," the screen changed. "It's Terran." Zaltrin's blood chilled. Terran. As in, Earthborn. There was no time for confirmation. The pod struck the ground 5 kilometers outside the entrenched front. The impact rippled across the surface, flattening half the forest and sending a wave of dust into the air like a dirty mushroom cloud. Silence reigned for 2 full seconds. Then came the footsteps. They weren't heavy, just deliberate. One by one. Crunch. 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 Stepping out of the settling ash was something that didn't belong in this corner of the galaxy. 2 meters tall, wrapped in matte black armor pitted with scars, eyes glowing dimly behind a featureless helmet. No insignia. No rank. Just a long, slow exhale from the helmet's filter as it turned toward the nearest Zarthos patrol. And then, it charged. The first 10 Zarthos died before they even aimed. Plasma fire lanced toward the Death Welder. Useless. The soldier moved too fast, diving, rolling, firing an antique-looking slug thrower that tore limbs off with each shot. He reached the trench line like a storm front and kept going, leaping the entire gap, tossing one Zarthos over his shoulder like a sack of Kelgrain fruit. His knife flashed, a monomolecular edge, and the screams rose higher. Zaltrin's orders came seconds too late. Fall back. Fall back. Reinforce the southern front. But it was already chaos. Dozens more pods were falling from the sky. This wasn't a strike team. It was a deployment. 2 hours earlier. Lieutenant Andrei Vostrikov wiped blood from his knuckles, flicked it onto the steel floor, and turned back to the shaking sergeant. "Repeat that. They're asking for reinforcements, sir. The Zarthos have overwhelmed the outpost on Seelan V. 3 squads down, 2 retreating." Vostrikov stood still for a long moment, considering the maps flashing on the wall beside him. Red lines, red blips, fading green, and one blinking white dot marked DRC, Drop Assault Regiment, Class 7. "Who asked?" he finally said. "Central Command on Varna. They expected support from Dominion allies. Got nothing. And they requested us?" The sergeant hesitated. "No. They said, any reinforcements. But we're the closest." Vostrikov grinned like a man already standing in hell and daring it to get hotter. "Well," he said, "let's not disappoint." He turned on his heel and walked into the main chamber of the cruiser Merciless Dawn. Before him stood 50 of Earth's worst ideas made flesh, Death Welders, every one of them. Soldiers bred or forged on the most lethal planet in the galaxy, conditioned not just to survive, but to win where survival wasn't even likely. Genetically standard, physically brutal, psychologically unstable enough to laugh when pinned under fire. One wiped blood off his boot with a piece of raw meat. Another sharpened a blade on his teeth. A third was doing push-ups with a crate full of ammo on his back. Vostrikov clapped his hands once. The room stilled. "We're not being officially requested," he said, voice steady. "We're being deployed. You know what that means." Snorts. Chuckles. A slow banging of fists against armor. Someone screamed, "Yes, sir," loud enough to rattle the bulkhead. "You've got 6 minutes. Pod up, drop hot, no support. We hit Seelan V like Earth itself is pissed off and sent us to explain why." The room erupted in stomps and war cries. Back on Seelan V, strategist Zaltrin was losing control. His personal guards, the elite Praetorians, were supposed to hold the command perimeter against any incursion for up to 48 hours. They lasted 9 minutes. Zaltrin saw it on the feed, one human sprinting toward them, weaving through plasma fire like he'd rehearsed the pattern. He dodged right into a direct hit from a turret, and kept running. Smoke trailing from his shoulder, blood visible under a cracked chest plate. A grenade flew from his hand and bounced once, perfectly, before detonating under the auto turret's belly. The camera feed went black. Impossible, Zaltrin whispered. They were supposed to be primitive. His assistant pulled up new footage. The Terrans were spreading out, swarming. Their pods hadn't landed randomly. They'd landed tactically. Each pod was placed to sever communication nodes, supply lines, and fallback routes. Zartho's squads sent to counter were being picked off like prey animals. But worst of all, the Terrans didn't stop. One was shot through the leg. He kept advancing. One was pinned under rubble. He used it for cover and picked off a squad before dying. Another was on fire, laughing as he took 3 Zarthos down with him in a self-detonated microfusion charge. Zaltrin screamed, "Get me an orbital strike. Now!" But the relay officer was already shaking his head. "They've jammed the link. The main relay tower's gone. We don't know how." A new feed flicked on. A group of Terrans stood on the destroyed tower, one of them holding up the Zarthos Dominion banner like a trophy. Then he threw it into the fire. Zaltrin's breathing was ragged. "This is extermination." Across the field, Sergeant Ronna Tilkan of the Unified Planetary Defense Force was bleeding, panicking, and very close to giving up. They'd been pushed back for 6 days. The Zarthos had crushed them with superior numbers, faster ships, and ruthless efficiency. Her squad was down to 4. She hadn't eaten in 2 days. When they requested reinforcements, she hadn't expected anything. Maybe a drone or 2. Maybe a medical drop. But what came out of the sky was not right. The first Terran that passed their shattered bunker didn't say a word. Just looked at them with glowing eyes through his cracked visor, nodded once, and kept moving, straight into the firestorm. Now they were watching it happen. One Deathwelder had taken an enemy artillery nest with nothing but a hammer. Another was climbing the side of a light tank while it fired, stabbing cables into its coolant systems before detonating it from the inside. Ronna whispered, "Are we hallucinating?" Her second-in-command, Aryen, was crying. "No," he said. "We asked for help. And this is what came." At the Northern Valley, a Terran by the call sign Brick took a direct hit to the chest plate. He staggered, growled, and slammed his shoulder into the Zarthos that fired it. The enemy cracked like a shell under a boot. Brick ripped the weapon from its claws and used it to gun down 3 more, switching weapons mid-charge, tossing one into a tree, and then dragging 2 more into a trench to choke them against the mud. Over comms, he growled, "South nest clear." "Confirm." "Confirmed," came Vostrikov's voice, breathless but calm. "Midline collapsing. Push through. Make them regret the day they evolved legs." Brick laughed. Short, low, terrifying. "You got it, LT." In the orbiting fleet, a single message got through the static. One line, decrypted and broadcast to nearby Allied ships. The Zarthos requested reinforcements. Terrans responded. Ground war conditions now classified as unpredictable. Advise evacuation before contact with local Deathwelders. And in the final minutes of the section, the Terrans did the unthinkable. They didn't hold the line. They advanced it. From trench to trench, they took ground like it was owed to them, not earned. The Zarthos fell back in disarray, their morale shattered, their hierarchy failing. In the command center, Zaltrin saw the human flag planted into the dirt outside. One soldier raised it, armor blackened, one arm hanging limp, face hidden behind a cracked visor. He pressed a button on his chest. Broadcast frequency. Across every Zarthos comm channel, a single message played. You asked for reinforcements. You got us. And we're just getting started. The Zarthos Dominion did not panic. It adapted. Deploy the Vorex strain, strategist Zaltran barked, slamming one clawed hand on the data console. And activate Protocol Red across all sectors. The officer nearest him stiffened. Vorex. Sir, that strain isn't stable. The Dominion Council. The Council isn't being flayed alive on a backwater hellrock. Zaltran snapped. We're not fighting soldiers. We're fighting something else. You think Deathwelders play by the rules? You think they care what's stable? He gestured to the feed, bodies of Dominion troops scattered like discarded armor shells. Craters. Black smoke. Human banners rising over the smoldering ruins of Dominion command bunkers. Unleash the Vorex, he hissed. And pray it doesn't turn on us first. The officer obeyed. Somewhere in the lower caverns beneath Fortress Zaxa, dozens of massive biotanks hissed open, venting green mist into dimly lit holding cells. Limbs twitched. Eyes opened, too many eyes. Claws skittered against reinforced plasteel. Screams, alien, human, even synthetic, echoed through the chamber. The Vorex were loose. On the surface of Seelan V, the air had changed. Sergeant Brick was the first to smell it. The tang of ammonia and ozone. His cracked helmet resealed with a hiss as he activated every filter. Something's wrong, he said over comms. Real wrong. I'm seeing spores in the air. Glowing. Same here, Vostrikov replied. Command, talk to me. No reply. Command, he repeated. Still nothing. The jam wasn't human-made now. It was environmental. The very atmosphere was becoming hostile. Sensors blinked as radiation levels spiked and biological particles flagged red across every HUD. Then came the screaming. At first, it was just local fauna. Then the Dominion patrols. Then, sickeningly, it was the humans. Ronna Tilken's squad had finally begun regrouping behind the advancing Deathwelders. She was almost beginning to believe they might survive the day. Until the forest moved. No wind. No quake. Just sudden, explosive, unnatural motion. Trees fell. Not from force, but from decay, black rot spreading faster than fire. Out of that rot came something even worse. Creatures the size of armored transports, twitching with insectal limbs and mouths that dripped acidic bile. What the hell is that? Arjen yelled. Ronna barely managed to shout, fall back, before the Vorex crashed into their position. 3 Deathwelders went down in the first minute. Corporal Hai Sung ripped his own arm off to avoid being pulled into one of the Vorex's fusion maws, laughing as he jammed a grenade into the open wound before the creature could digest him. The resulting explosion turned half the field into burning goo, but didn't slow the other Vorex. Private Mendez, seeing another squad flanked, charged a Vorex's side with 2 fusion drills and screamed, "Say H, you bug-faced bastard," as he punched through its thorax. He was still fighting inside its ribcage when it collapsed. His body never recovered. The Deathwelders didn't flinch. They adapted. They stopped fighting the Vorex like enemy soldiers. They fought them like wild predators. Back in the field HQ, Vostrikov coordinated the fallback. We're not retreating. We're pulling them into the kill zone. Brick barked. Kill zone's full of nightmares, boss. Exactly. They think we're panicking. Let them. He tapped his helmet. Activating Predator Protocol. Predator Protocol was never meant for conventional war. It was the contingency for planetary extermination class environments, where the enemy was the ecosystem. All human soldiers locked into hard suit compression. Visors darkened. Their biosigns vanished from Zarthos sensors. 1,000 human hearts slowed in unison. One long, collective inhale. And then, the screaming stopped. From the trees, the Vorex hesitated. Predators themselves, they could sense something was wrong. Their prey wasn't prey anymore. It was hunting back. From the treetops, shadows leapt. From underground, humans burst forth like revenants. From the smoke, a single soldier with one working arm roared and charged with a broken blade. The Deathwelders went feral. Ronna watched one of them tear a Vorex limb from limb, covered in its acidic blood, screaming into its chest cavity. Another tackled a monster 4 times his size into a ravine and detonated both of them. "They're insane," she whispered. "They're not soldiers." "No," Aryen said beside her, eyes wide. "They're Earth's immune system." Back in the Dominion command bunker, Zaltrin's jaw trembled. "It's not working." The Vorex were dying. Not from weaponry. From tactics. The humans were baiting them into crossfire. Into traps. Using their own corpses as bombs. Blinding them with infrared flares and flash bombs tuned to Vorex-specific neural wavelengths. And worse, some Deathwelders were being taken by the Vorex, bitten, infected, mutated, and kept fighting anyway. A new feed showed a half-mutated human with one glowing Vorex eye, dragging a Dominion officer by the throat while howling into the camera. Zaltrin's mandibles clattered. "They're adapting to the virus." A technician behind him whispered, "They're worse than the Vorex." 30 kilometers away, Lieutenant Vostrikov knelt beside a wounded Deathwelder. "Status." The man coughed blood. "I've got 20 minutes. Less if I laugh. You'll make 'em count." The Deathwelder grinned through red-streaked teeth. "You think I trained on Venus to die clean?" He detonated his armor before Vostrikov could reply, taking 2 more Vorex with him. Vostrikov stood up. "Fall back to Ridge Echo. Final line." "But sir," someone said in his earpiece, "that leaves the remaining UPDF units exposed." Vostrikov's voice was iron. "They won't be alone." Rana's squad reached the edge of Ridge Echo and found a terrifying sight. 20 human soldiers setting up what looked like an ambush, except there were no clear targets. "Where's your enemy line?" she asked one of them. The human stared back through a cracked visor, breathing shallow, one eye swollen shut. "We are the line." Then Vostrikov arrived. He looked at her surviving 3 squadmates, then handed her a rifle. "You hold this pass for 12 minutes, he said. "That's all we need." Ronna blinked. "To do what?" "To make them regret coming here." The final wave came at sunset. Not just Vorex now, but Zarthos elite, biomechs, atmospheric bombers screaming overhead. Desperation tactics. Total war. Chemical strikes. Vostrikov smiled grimly. "Let them try." The humans sprang their trap. Buried charge lines linked to the planet's crust detonated in sequence. A planned earthquake. Entire hillsides collapsed, burying advancing troops. Plasma fusion mines turned valleys into furnaces. Sniper nests picked off officers by heartbeat signatures. But still, they came. And the humans broke to meet them. No more lines. No more defense. Just rage. Combat became melee. Ammo ran dry. Fists, blades, teeth, even helmets used as weapons. One Dominion captain screamed, "Why won't they die?" Brick caught him by the throat and whispered through his broken faceplate, "Because you came to our house." By minute 10, the line was overrun. Vostrikov's squad was down to 6. Brick had 3 bones exposed. Ronna was holding Aryen's guts in with her bare hands. The Dominion was winning again. Then the humans activated Phase 2. A single dropship, undetected, had landed behind enemy lines 3 hours prior. From it, Deathwelders in stealth armor now emerged, detonating the Dominion supply lines, jamming orbital relays, and planting arc disruptors in the soil. At minute 12, the disruptors fired. They turned the air itself into a weapon. Electric storms formed instantly. Plasma discharges struck metal armor. Dominion command centers fried. The skies bled lightning. Screaming Zarthos dropped their weapons, covering their heads like children in a thunderstorm. In the heart of the valley, Vostrikov collapsed beside Brick, both laughing, half dead, barely breathing, as the storms consumed the battlefield. "We good," Brick rasped. Vostrikov coughed blood. "We're Deathworlders. We're always good." Above them, the skies opened, not with fire, but with light. New drop pods. More Deathworlders. Reinforcements had arrived. For the reinforcements. The Dominion finally admitted the truth. They were losing. Not to superior numbers. Not to superior technology. But to something no simulation had accounted for. "They should be dead," screamed High Executive Velka across the Dominion flagship's command deck. "We've dropped bioweapons, nukes, atmospheric destabilizers. By every metric, they should be ash." Strategist Zaltrin, now hollow-eyed and shaking, answered quietly. "They are Deathworlders. Metrics don't apply." On the main holoscreen, the devastation of Ceylon V played out in real time. Scorch marks that once were cities. Craters where Vorex nests used to be. Human units, bloody, limping, half-crazed, still advancing. The battlefield now looked more like a charred hellscape than a world. "They've triggered seismic detonation patterns across fault lines," an officer warned. "They're trying to tear the planet apart." Velka stared. "Why? They're still down there." And that's when the realization hit. The humans weren't fighting to win. They were fighting to end it. Whatever the cost. In the shadowed valley below, Lieutenant Andrei Vostrikov stood bleeding from 3 wounds, his armor held together with welding tape, one eye swollen shut. Brick slumped against a boulder beside him, missing half his left arm and still chewing on a protein ration. "You ever think we'd live to see the end of a war?" Brick grunted. "I still don't," Vostrikov said. Ronna Tilkin approached, dragging a Dominion repeater cannon behind her. Her eyes were raw. Her voice hollow. "If we don't do something fast, we're dead in hours." "We are anyway," Vostrikov said. "But I'm not dying with a maybe," Brick added. "What's the plan, boss?" Vostrikov opened a panel on his wrist. And hesitated. It was a secure channel. One reserved for only the worst-case scenarios. Omega Protocol. "Command gave us a choice," he said grimly. "We either hold the valley and hope for evac." He looked at them both. "Or we detonate the core." Rana's eyes widened. "You mean the planetary core?" "It's already destabilized," Vostrikov said. "We rig the final detonators, collapse the crust, and bury the Dominion fleet in Ceylon V's death throes." "You'll kill every living thing on the planet," she whispered. "Including us," Brick muttered. "Sounds fair." High above, in orbit, Dominion engineers worked frantically. All ships ready bombardment sequence. Velka barked. "I want every orbital cannon, every mass driver, every planetary killer pointed at Ceylon V." "High Executor," Zaltrin said slowly. "Our ground forces are still down there." "They're already dead," Velka snapped. "Only thing we can do now is stop the humans from crawling out of that hole and bringing hell to our worlds." The Dominion flagship's main battery locked onto Ceylon V. Countdown. 120 seconds. Down below, the final phase began. Deathworlders moved like spirits through fire and smoke. Wounded, delirious, many dying, but all determined. Detonation charges were placed along key faults. Mag stabilizers were dropped. Final seismic amplifiers were buried in deep tunnels dug by hand, blade, and blood. 2 minutes, Brick whispered, watching the orbital fire track in the sky. "Ronna, can your people get clear?" Vostrikov asked. "No. We stay with you." He didn't argue. Instead, he keyed the Omega link. A quiet voice answered. "Synthetic. Female. Omega Protocol confirmed." "Are you certain, Lieutenant?" He looked across the valley, at the torn earth, the burning sky, and the blood-soaked ground where humans and aliens alike had fallen. He exhaled once. "Yes." Omega countdown initiated. In orbit, the Dominion's orbital cannons powered up. Impact in 30 seconds, said the gunnery officer. Then the power blinked. Systems flickered. All lights on the flagship dimmed, just for a moment. Then a whisper came through every speaker, every channel, every neural implant across the fleet. You shouldn't have come here. Back on the surface, seismic readings spiked. The first detonator fired. A chain reaction began. The ground shook, not from bombardment, but from within. Ronna grabbed a fallen Zarthos weapon and took a knee beside Vostrikov. If I'm dying standing up. Brick laughed. That's how humans do it. The sky above cracked. The stars vanished behind waves of fire. The Dominion fleet began to open fire, but their shots came seconds too late. The crust buckled. The planet screamed. And Seelan V began to die. Dominion vessels attempted to flee. Too slow. Shockwaves reached the outer atmosphere. Several capital ships cracked in half as tectonic bursts spewed magma into orbit. Smaller vessels were caught in gravity surges and torn apart. The Dominion's Grand Fleet, 200 ships strong, was gone in under 4 minutes. Velka's flagship was the last to go, torn open like a can from the inside as a pressure wave collapsed its core reactor. In his final moment, Velka saw something impossible. A human soldier standing on a floating chunk of land in the upper atmosphere, staring back at him, saluting as the flames took him. Later, much later, a single signal crackled across deep space. An automatic relay drone, programmed to escape planetary death, transmitted a final burst. Seelan V. Lost. Dominion fleet. Annihilated. Cause. Terran Omega Protocol. Deathwelders refused surrender. Triggered extinction-level detonation. One final message recovered from Terran Field Commander. We don't die for glory. We die to make sure you never try this again. They called it the burning of Seelan. Across the galaxy, hushed voices whispered the tale. How Earth's warriors, those born of storms, bred on a death world, had not only won an impossible war, but ended a planet to do it. But the real fear began when they learned the Deathwelders didn't all die with it. They survived. The Dominion was in chaos. 4 days after the detonation of Seelan V, what remained of the Dominion Council convened in a heavily shielded vault beneath the crust of Hecaros Prime. The once proud High Executive Velka was vaporized with the fleet. Zaltran's last transmission was a scream followed by silence. Half the command hierarchy was gone. What are we dealing with? Counselor Verix hissed, antennae twitching wildly. What are they? The holoscreen flickered to life, displaying grainy footage recovered from the last atmospheric drone above Seelan V. Deathwelders marching through fire, dragging wounded, lifting each other with one arm while the other clutched a weapon, bleeding, laughing. Not one of them wore armor intact. Most walked like dead men. But their eyes still burned. Monsters, muttered Counselor Dravik. No, came a voice from the shadows. Men. That's what terrifies you. The speaker stepped forward, Admiral Cross, survivor of 4 wars and known cynic of Dominion supremacy. We thought Earth was a backwards planet, Cross said flatly. We classified it as a Class 15 death world. Dangerous, yes. Containable, certainly. But we never imagined. He tapped the control panel. New footage played. A rescue ship, Earth's own design, descending into the ruin that had once been Seelan V. A handful of human signals were detected. Survivors. Badly injured. Still fighting. Still holding the field. They cracked a planet, Cross said, and then dug themselves out of it. The silence in the room was absolute. They didn't just win, he said. They changed the rules. 3 survivors were pulled from the charred remains of the valley. Vostrikov, Brick, and Ronna Tilkan. Ranna's legs were shattered. Brick's arm was a mangled stump. Vostrikov's heart had stopped for 2 minutes before they restarted it. They were airlifted into a secure human medical frigate orbiting the remains of Ceylon V, a planet now reduced to jagged fragments and molten rivers still cooling in the void. Doctors said they shouldn't have survived. No atmosphere. No stable terrain. Radiation spikes from the core collapse. No food. No water. But the Deathworlders just wouldn't stop breathing. 2 weeks later, Ronna stood with a cane beside Vostrikov at a classified military debrief, staring at a massive hollow of Dominion space. Admirals, politicians, and war planners filled the room. But no one said a word until Vostrikov finally cleared his throat. "We know what's coming," he said. "The Dominion's wounded. They'll want payback." A young diplomat asked quietly, "How do we stop them?" Brick, his new cybernetic arm gleaming, smirked from a seat in the back. "We don't stop them," he said. "We warn them." The Dominion sent probes, recon fleets, scouting vessels, assassins. None returned. The first scouting vessel entered Terran space and was found drifting weeks later, its crew all unconscious. No signs of violence. Just a single word burned into every console in 30 different languages. Don't. What began as fear soon turned to myth. Galactic children whispered bedtime stories about the humans who tore a planet apart. Mercenaries refused contracts that even mentioned Deathworlders. Criminal syndicates began checking for Terran birthmarks before hiring new muscle. And the Dominion? They reclassified Earth. Not as a death world, but as a galactic red zone. Uncontactable, unassailable, untouchable. Still, the rumors persisted. Of Deathworlder units appearing off the record in war zones, ending genocides, toppling tyrants, vanishing before being thanked. Of a squad that appeared on a mining moon during a Zarthos raid, who slaughtered an entire battalion without a word and left behind nothing but ash and a crude drawing of Earth's moon carved into the rock. Of survivors from other systems, whispering, "We didn't call for them. They just knew." Ronna Tilkan, once a half-starved planetary defense grunt, now stood in full Terran command armor at the edge of a deep space orbital academy, staring down at a new generation of cadets. "They say we're monsters," she told the class. "But monsters don't sacrifice. Monsters don't pull civilians out of fire with their own bones broken. Monsters don't blow up a world to stop a war." She looked every cadet in the eye. "We're not monsters. We're what happens when you push humanity too far." On a forgotten moon near the ruins of Ceylon V, Brick returned one last time. Not for war. For memory. He stood at the edge of a crater, the one they'd fought in, the one they'd survived. He placed a single steel marker in the ground. Etched on it were the names of every Deathworlder lost. No flag. No anthem. Just one inscription. They asked for reinforcements. They got Earth's answer. And Earth doesn't whisper. It roars.